A U.S. Marine reached a German Shepherd puppy trapped beside a flooded ditch. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to the one who shouldn't have been found at all. The night is heavy with rain, the kind that turns quiet roads into mirrors of trembling light. Wind slides across the asphalt, carrying the scent of wet dirt and cold metal. In that restless darkness, a sound barely rises above the storm, thin, broken, almost swallowed by the rushing water. A cry. A plea. Beside a flooded ditch, where runoff carves its own violent path down the shoulder of an empty county highway, a small German Shepherd puppy clings to a patch of grass no wider than a dinner plate. His paws slip. His breath shivers. Water splashes against his side with each surge, threatening to pull him under. He wasn't supposed to survive the hour. Headlights cut through the sheeted rain, scattering silver across the ditch. A truck slows. Tires hiss over the wet pavement. The beam swings, catches the trembling shape pressed against the mud. For a heartbeat, everything stills, rain, wind, even fear, as if the night itself recognizes the moment hope arrives. Staff Sergeant Evan Walker grips the wheel, blinking against the storm. He's on his way back to base, uniform damp from a long shift, mind quiet in the way only exhaustion can force. But something in that light, some flicker of motion, some instinct honed through years of watching for the smallest signs, pulls at him. He eases the truck to the shoulder, engine rumbling low. The rain greets him in a cold rush when he steps out, each drop stinging like sand against his skin. He narrows his eyes, raises a hand to shield against the glare, and sees it more clearly now, a tiny silhouette shaking violently, mud clinging to its fur, water lapping at its paws. A puppy. Alone. Moments from disappearing beneath the flood. Evan's breath catches, quiet but sharp, a sound shaped by memory, by the lives he couldn't reach in time, by the ones that slipped away in places far from this lonely road. He takes a slow step forward, boots sinking into the softened earth. The puppy lifts its head, eyes wide, reflecting the beam of the headlights like two frightened embers. The wind steals its weak cry, but Evan hears what matters, fear, and a stubborn will to live. Easy, buddy, he murmurs, though the storm swallows his voice. Another step. Another inch of ground sloughs away near the waterline. The ditch roars louder. But Evan keeps moving, shoulders squared, jaw set. Because something in that tiny frame, fragile, shaking, holding on with everything it has, calls him back from the numbness he's carried for too long. And in that moment, under rain and thunder and the dim glow of a roadside lamp, Staff Sergeant Evan Walker reaches for the life the night was trying to take. Rain pushes against Evan Walker's back as he edges closer to the trembling bundle of fur. The ground softens beneath his boots, giving just enough to remind him how easily the ditch could take both man and puppy if he misjudges a single step. The headlights behind him cast long streaks across the water, turning every ripple into a warning. The puppy's breath comes in fast, uneven pulls, each one lighter than the last. Evan crouches, lowering himself slowly, palms open, letting the frightened little creature see his hands first. The rain slides down his sleeves and gathers at his fingertips before falling into the rushing water below. "You are all right," he whispers, though he knows the puppy cannot hear him clearly. What matters is the tone, steady and low, the way he has spoken to nervous recruits and skittish rescue dogs in past missions. The puppy shifts, paws slipping an inch, sending a quick pulse of fear across its tiny frame. Evan reacts without hesitation, leaning his weight back to counterbalance the slope, inching closer until he can feel the warmth of the puppy's breath. He reaches out and tucks his fingers gently behind its front legs, lifting with care as if holding something made of fragile glass. The puppy curls instinctively toward his chest, its soaked fur clinging to his uniform, its heartbeat fluttering like a weak drum beneath his hand. Evan draws it close and rises, letting his body shield the pup from the cold wind sweeping across the roadside. The storm muffles everything, but inside the quiet shelter of his embrace, the pup releases a small sound, not quite a cry, not quite a sigh, something in between. That sound softened something in Evan's chest, something he thought had hardened too deeply to change. He moves back toward the truck, each step cautious, aware of the slick mud shifting under him. When he opens the door, warm air rushes out, fogging momentarily against the storm. He settles the puppy on the passenger seat, wrapping it in his field jacket and tucking the fabric around its trembling body. The pup's eyes barely stay open, its breath short and shallow, but it presses weakly into the warmth as if trusting the first safe thing it has felt all night. Evan slides behind the wheel, glancing once toward the ditch where the water continues to surge as if impatient for whatever it was trying to claim. He swallows, a quiet ache pressing behind his ribs. Memories rise, uninvited but familiar, dust, smoke, a stretch of foreign road, a hand he could not reach in time. He exhales, steady but heavy, and looks back at the small creature curled beneath his jacket. Not tonight, he murmurs. The engine hums to life, a soft vibration under his hands. The puppy stirs, giving a faint nudge against his sleeve, barely there but real. He places a gentle hand on its side, feeling its fragile rhythm. Then he pulls onto the road, headlights carving through rain, carrying them both away from the place where a life almost ended before it even began. The storm trails behind the truck as Evan drives through the quiet stretch of county road, the wipers pushing away sheets of rain that keep returning with stubborn persistence. The small bundle under his field jacket barely moves, only giving the occasional tremor that reminds him how thin the line is between holding on and fading away. He turns the heater up, letting warm air drift toward the puppy, hoping it helps raise its weakening body temperature. The pup's breathing remains shallow, but every now and then, a small puff of warm air escapes its nose and brushes against the fabric, a tiny reminder of life hanging on. Evan glances down at it, his voice low, carried more in breath than sound. You are still fighting. That is good. The gentle glow of the dashboard light softens his features, revealing tired eyes that have seen too many nights like this, where the weight of another life sits in his hands. But there is something different here, something he cannot name yet. He pulls into a small parking lot with a flickering sign that reads, Foster Trail Veterinary Clinic. The building is modest, tucked beneath the branches of tall pines, their needles shimmering with leftover rain. Light spills softly through the clinic windows, a warm contrast to the cold night outside. Evan stops the engine and gathers the puppy carefully, lifting the small body with both hands and keeping it close to his chest so the warmth will not escape. The pup gives a faint sound, barely more than a whisper, but it nudges gently into his palm as if sensing safety. Evan steps through the clinic door, where the light inside feels like stepping into a different world. The scent of antiseptic and cedar shavings fills the air, soft and clean. Behind the counter stands Dr. Hannah Brooks, her hair pulled back, glasses perched slightly down her nose as she sorts through patient files. She looks up at the soaked marine and the bundle in his arms, and her expression immediately shifts from routine focus to deep concern. Bring him here, she says, voice calm but quick with purpose. Evan lays the puppy on a padded table as Dr. Brooks moves with quiet efficiency, wrapping the pup in warm towels and checking its breathing, temperature, and pulse. She murmurs gentle encouragement as she works, her hands steady and sure. Evan watches every movement, his jaw tight, his breath held without even realizing it. The doctor pauses for a moment, resting her hand lightly over the pup's small chest. He is cold, she says softly. Very cold. But he has a spark. I can feel it. Evan releases a slow breath, one that feels like it has been trapped in him since the moment he saw the puppy by the ditch. The storm continues faintly outside, tapping against the clinic windows like distant fingers, but inside, time seems to slow into a quiet, fragile stillness. Dr. Brooks adjusts an oxygen line near the pup's nose, then glances at Evan. "Stay close," she says. "Sometimes all a little one needs is to know someone is here." Evan steps closer, placing his hand gently along the puppy's side. The warmth of his palm spreads across its weak breaths. The pup stirs, just slightly, and leans into the touch as if recognizing the presence that pulled it from the edge of the rushing water. Dr. Hannah Brooks moves quietly around the small examination room, adjusting the heating pad beneath the towels and checking the puppy's heartbeat with a gentle concentration that steadies the air. The soft beeping of the monitor blends with the distant patter of rain sliding down the clinic windows, creating a rhythm that feels almost like a lullaby meant to coax the little one back toward warmth. Evan stands close, his hand resting lightly along the puppy's side. The touch is barely pressure at all, more like a promise than support, but the effect is immediate. The puppy leans into the warmth, its breaths faint yet steady enough to stir the towel. For a moment, Evan just watches, the dim overhead light casting a muted golden glow across the pup's wet fur. Something about the small rise and fall of that tiny chest tugs at him in a way he cannot explain. It reminds him of nights overseas when silence was rare and fragile things were treasured even more. Dr. Brooks looks up from her notes, her tone soft. "He is trying," she says. "That is a very good sign." Evan nods, the lines around his eyes relaxing just enough to reveal the tired kindness beneath them. "What else can I do?" She steps closer, placing a warm hand over the puppy's back. "Stay with him for now. Sometimes presence does more than medicine can measure." Her words settle into the space between them. Evan shifts his weight, pulling a stool close so he can sit beside the table. The room smells faintly of cedar bedding and clean cotton, the kind of scent that wraps around someone and tells them they are safe. He lowers his voice to a quiet murmur meant only for the creature resting beneath the towels. "You held on out there," he says. "Just hold on a little longer." The puppy stirs again, a small sound escaping its throat. Not distress. Something gentler, like the faint hum of recognition. Evan brushes a thumb carefully over the edge of its tiny paw. It is cold, but not as cold as before. Not as still. Dr. Brooks adjusts the oxygen line, watches the numbers on the monitor shift ever so slightly in the right direction, then gives a slow, hopeful nod. "He has a will," she says. "Sometimes that is the difference between fading and coming back." Evan glances at her, but only for a moment. His attention is pulled back to the fragile life in front of him. The storm outside has eased to a quiet drizzle, tapping softly as if encouraging the little one to keep fighting. Minutes stretch in gentle patience. The pup's breaths deepen just enough for Evan to notice. He leans closer, letting out a breath he did not realize he was holding. "That is it," he whispers. "You stay with me." The clinic feels warmer now, the kind of warmth that appears not just from heaters and towels, but from the fragile glow of something beginning to shift. In that quiet room, surrounded by soft light and steady hands, a tiny heartbeat continues its uneven climb back toward life, refusing to let go of the chance it was given. Dr. Hannah Brooks continues her careful work, adjusting the warm towels as the small body beneath them fights its quiet battle. The clinic lights glow softly overhead, casting a warm halo across the stainless steel table. Evan remains beside the puppy, his hand steady on its side, feeling each fragile breath rise beneath his palm. The hours have stretched without him noticing, thinning into a kind of gentle stillness broken only by the rhythmic hum of the heater and the rain easing into a soft drizzle outside. The puppy stirs, a faint tremble along its flank, and Evan leans closer, listening to the slight shift in the tiny breaths. They are still shallow, but they hold a rhythm that was not there earlier, a small pulse of determination. Dr. Brooks listens with her stethoscope, her brow lifting in quiet surprise. "He is warming up faster than I expected," she says, her voice softened by cautious hope. "His heartbeat is gaining strength. It is still delicate, but it is responding." Evan lets a breath slip out, slow and relieved. He has been fighting since the moment I picked him up. His voice is low, nearly a whisper, as if he fears speaking too loudly might break the fragile progress. The puppy makes a soft sound, barely a squeak, but enough for Evan to lift his hand and gently brush the damp fur along its head. The pup nudges weakly into the touch, its eyes fluttering just enough to show a glimmer of consciousness. "There you go," Evan murmurs. "You stay with us." The storm outside has nearly passed now, leaving only the muffled drips of water sliding from the roof. The night feels calmer, as if the world itself has slowed to match the pace of recovery happening on the table. Dr. Brooks prepares a small syringe of warmed fluids and carefully administers it beneath the puppy's skin to help stabilize its hydration. Her movements are slow and gentle, guided by years of knowing exactly how much a fragile creature can handle. "He is responding well," she says softly. "He wants to stay." Evan watches every tiny reaction, each flutter of breath, each twitch of the puppy's ears. His expression shifts in the faint glow, softening into something almost tender, something shaped by nights when he had watched over wounded teammates, hoping for any small sign that they were still fighting. The puppy's breaths deepen slightly, a slow expansion of its chest that feels like a quiet victory. Evan moves his hand to rest over its tiny ribs, letting the warmth of his palm offer whatever comfort it can. The puppy leans toward him again, just a small nudge, but it is enough to stir a feeling in him that has not surfaced in a long time. A feeling of being needed. A feeling of being trusted. Dr. Brooks sets her clipboard aside and gives a reassuring nod. "If he keeps improving at this rate, the next few hours will tell us a lot." Her voice is gentle, but there is an undercurrent of optimism. Evan keeps his eyes on the little one nestled beneath the towels, absorbing the soft breaths like a promise. The clinic feels warmer, safer, almost like the world has drawn a small circle around them where nothing else matters. And inside that circle, a tiny heartbeat fights its way back toward life, carried forward by the warmth of a marine's steady hands and the quiet grace of a creature choosing to hold on. The hours slip deeper into the night, and the world outside the clinic settles into a hush, as if even the air is careful not to disturb the fragile fight unfolding on the examination table. A soft warmth now radiates from the towels wrapped around the puppy, the kind of warmth that feels earned, delicate, and still uncertain. Dr. Hannah Brooks checks the monitor again, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully at the slow but noticeable improvement in the tiny heartbeat. "He is stabilizing," she says quietly, almost as if she is afraid that saying it too loudly might change the outcome. Evan nods, though his gaze never leaves the little creature nestled beneath the layers of cotton. His hand has not moved from the puppy's side, and in the dim golden light his fingers look steady, though he feels the tremor of hope flickering just under his skin. The puppy responds to his touch with a faint shift of its head, pressing its nose gently into the towel before relaxing again. Evan leans closer, letting his breath warm the air around the pup. "Keep going," he murmurs softly. "You have come this far." For a few moments, the room is silent except for the hum of the heater and the soft ticking of a wall clock. Time feels suspended, held between a fading storm and whatever promise rests in the small heartbeat beneath Evan's palm. Dr. Brooks prepares a warming lamp and positions it at a gentle angle so the light spills across the towels like a soft sunrise. The glow blankets the pup, deepening its comfort and giving its damp fur a subtle sheen. Evan glances at the doctor. "Do you think he will make it?" She meets his eyes, then looks back at the little one. "I think he is trying harder than most would in his condition," she answers honestly. "Sometimes, that effort is enough. Sometimes, it is not. But tonight," she pauses, watching the puppy's chest rise with a little more strength than before. "Tonight, he is choosing to stay." Evan absorbs her words slowly, letting them settle into him like a quiet truth. He watches the puppy shift again, its breathing still shallow but now holding a faint rhythm that is unmistakably determined. He brushes a thumb lightly between its small ears, and the pup lets out a soft exhale, the kind that sounds almost like relief. The lights in the clinic flicker gently as the storm finally releases its last whisper of rain. The windows glisten with droplets that reflect the warm interior light, turning the glass into a soft mosaic of gold and gray. Evan lifts his eyes toward the sound of the rain's final taps, then looks back to the puppy. Something inside him loosens, a long-held tension he had carried from one deployment to another, from one lonely night to the next. Dr. Brooks adjusts the towel once more, noticing the change in Evan's expression but choosing not to comment. Instead, she simply smiles, a small reassuring curve of her lips. "He knows you are here," she says. "Animals sense that. It makes a difference." Evan nods again, softer this time. His voice feels steadier when he answers. "Then I will stay as long as he needs." In the warm, quiet space of the clinic, the night holds its breath as a tiny heartbeat pushes forward, supported by steady hands, soft light, and the unspoken bond forming between a marine and the small life he refused to leave behind. The night deepens into a quieter blue, the kind that settles over small towns when storms begin to drift away and leave only the soft trace of their passing. Inside the warm circle of the clinic's examination room, the little German Shepherd puppy continues its slow climb back toward strength. Its breaths rise with a steadier rhythm now, fragile but purposeful, like a tiny drum learning its own beat. Evan remains beside him, seated on the small stool, shoulders curved forward as if forming a shelter around the life he nearly lost to the rushing water. His palm stays against the pup's side, feeling each breath, each tremor, each small victory. Dr. Hannah Brooks watches them from a distance, arms folded loosely as she leans against the counter. She knows the signs of a creature choosing to live, and she sees that faint determination flickering through the puppy's movements. But she also sees something else, something changing in the marine before her. Exhaustion clings to the lines around his eyes, but there is a softness now, a quiet awareness that was not present when he first walked through her door. Evan gently adjusts the towel closer to the puppy's neck, making sure no warm air escapes. The little one responds with a slight press of its tiny head into the fabric, an instinctive search for comfort. That small gesture reaches deep into him, stirring memories of nights when he had watched over wounded teammates, times when life balanced on the edge of breath, and all he could offer was presence. He leans closer, whispering, "You are doing good. Stay with me." The puppy's ears twitch, and a delicate sound escapes its throat, something like a sigh softened by warmth. Dr. Brooks steps forward with a fresh blanket heated in the small dryer at the back of the clinic. She hands it to Evan. "Wrap it around him," she says quietly. "His temperature is rising, but he needs every bit of help we can give him." Evan takes the blanket and lifts the puppy with careful hands, cradling him against his chest as he tucks the soft fabric around its trembling body. The warmth spreads quickly through the layers, and the pup instinctively nuzzles closer to the steady heartbeat beneath Evan's uniform. Dr. Brooks gives a faint smile at the sight. "He knows your heartbeat now," she murmurs. "It helps him feel safe." Evan lowers his gaze to the small face pressed against him. The puppy's eyes are mostly closed, but its tiny lashes flutter as if trying to stay aware of the person holding him. Evan whispers again, softer, "I have you. You are all right." The room grows still, almost sacred in its quiet. The storm has fully passed, leaving only the occasional drip of water from the clinic's gutters. The warm light glows across the metal table, casting long shadows that sway gently with the movement of the overhead lamp. Dr. Brooks checks the monitor once more, nodding at the subtle increase in the puppy's heart rate. "He is improving," she says. "Slowly, but surely." Evan lets out a breath that trembles with relief. He draws the pup closer, his hand steady against the small rise and fall of its breathing. In this soft, sheltered moment, he realizes he is no longer thinking about the ditch, the storm, or the fear that gripped him when he first saw the tiny shape fighting against the water. All he feels now is the weight of a life choosing him, leaning into him, trusting him. And in a way he cannot explain, something inside him leans back. The minutes drift into the quiet edge of dawn, the kind where the world feels suspended between night and morning, holding its breath as if waiting for a sign. Inside the small examination room, the warm light glows softly across the table, where the tiny German Shepherd puppy rests in the blanket wrapped around him. His breaths have steadied into a fragile rhythm, but exhaustion still clings to his small body like a shadow that refuses to loosen its hold. Evan sits close, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, his hands cupped gently around the warm bundle. His eyes trace every small rise and fall of the puppy's chest, absorbing each moment as if afraid he might miss the one that matters most. The stillness of the clinic settles into him, quieting the noise that usually sits at the edges of his thoughts. For a long moment, it feels like the storm outside never happened, as if the world has narrowed to the soft glow of a lamp and the faint warmth of life in his hands. Dr. Hannah Brooks steps back into the room, her voice low to avoid disturbing the fragile peace. "How is he doing?" she asks. Evan glances up, his voice barely more than a whisper. "He is hanging on." She moves to the table, listening to the pup's heartbeat with her stethoscope. Her brow furrows slightly, her breath catching just a little before she steadies it. Evan watches her closely, trying to read her expression, but she keeps her features gentle and controlled. She adjusts the oxygen line, checks his temperature again, then looks back at the monitor. The numbers have dipped, not dramatically, but enough to pull a faint thread of worry through the room. She removes the stethoscope slowly. "He is tired," she says softly, choosing her words with care. "His body is doing everything it can, but he is very small and very weak. These moments can go either way." The words land gently, but they land all the same, carrying a quiet weight that tightens the space between them. Evan lowers his eyes to the puppy, who gives a small tremor under the blanket, a soft exhale that sounds too thin for comfort. He draws the bundle closer to his chest, letting his warmth surround it, as if shielding it from the possibility of slipping away. Dr. Brooks places a hand on Evan's shoulder, grounding him. "Stay with him," she says. Sometimes the presence of someone who cares gives them something to reach for. She steps back, giving him space, her footsteps fading into the hallway. The room grows still again. Evan lowers his forehead close to the pup's tiny head, his voice barely louder than breath. "I am right here," he murmurs. "You are not alone. Not tonight." The puppy gives the faintest twitch of its ear, but the effort seems to drain what little strength remains. His breathing flutters, light and uneven, then steadies, then flutters again. Evan feels the change instantly, the subtle shift in rhythm, the way the pup's small chest struggles to lift. A chill passes through him, quiet but sharp. The lamp hums softly overhead. The heater blows warm air across the room in slow, steady waves. But despite the warmth, a thin edge of fear settles in the space between each shaky breath. Evan cups the pup more tightly, willing his own strength into that tiny heartbeat. His voice softens into a whisper shaped by hope and something deeper. "Do not go," he breathes, his words barely stirring the air. "Stay with me." And for a moment that stretches into stillness, the only answer is the fragile rise and fall of a life fighting to hold on. The air inside the small clinic holds a fragile stillness, the kind that settles right before a decision is made by something greater than medicine or human hands. Evan keeps the tiny German Shepherd pup tucked against his chest, feeling each uneven breath flutter through the blanket like the wings of a tired bird. The warmth of his embrace seems to steady the little one for a moment, but then the rhythm shifts again, softening into something that worries him far more than the frantic breaths before. Dr. Hannah Brooks steps quietly back into the room, alerted by the subtle change in the pup's breathing pattern. She studies the monitor, her face calm but touched with concern. "He is very tired," she says softly. This is where many small ones decide whether they can continue. Her voice is gentle, without pressure or fear, but the truth inside it feels heavier than the storm that raged outside earlier. Evan lowers his head, letting his forehead rest lightly near the pup's small ears. His breath warms the blanket, and for a brief second the pup responds with the tiniest nudge, a soft reminder that he is still here. Still trying. Evan whispers, "I am right here. Do not let go." The pup's breathing wavers again, a tremble passing through its small ribs. Its tiny paws curl faintly beneath the blanket, then relax with a slow exhale. The room feels even quieter now, as if the world is holding its breath for both of them. Dr. Brooks steps closer, her hand gently brushing the pup's back. She checks the temperature again, adjusts the warming lamp, and watches the monitor. A faint dip in the numbers makes her pause. Evan sees it. His jaw tightens, but he does not move his hands from the small fragile body leaning into him. He knows this posture too well, the moment when strength becomes prayer, when presence becomes the only thing left to offer. The pup's breaths turn shallow, spaced by long moments of stillness that send a cold ripple through Evan's chest. He closes his eyes, steadying his own breath as if lending it to the one in his arms. "Hold on," he murmurs. "You came so far." The puppy gives the lightest twitch of its ear, a movement so small it could be missed if Evan were not watching with the intensity of someone who has seen life fade before. Then silence settles over the little body, soft, uncertain, and terrifyingly still. Evan's heart stumbles in his chest. He pulls the puppy closer, his hand resting fully over its ribs, searching for a sign. Any sign? Dr. Brooks leans in, her expression focused and tender, listening for even the faintest whisper of breath. For a long moment, the room becomes a quiet suspended place, filled with the hum of machines and the slow, steady ticking of the clock on the wall. Evan feels the weight of the puppy's stillness, heavier than anything he has carried in years. He closes his eyes, speaking into the silence. "Please," he whispers, not as a Marine, not as a man who has endured loss, but as someone who simply does not want this small life to slip away alone. And then, in that thin sliver of quiet where hope feels almost impossible, something shifts beneath his hand. A small shudder. A faint intake of breath. So soft it feels like a miracle beginning to stir. The faint shudder beneath Evan's hand is so small he almost doubts it, a fragile ripple of movement that feels more like hope imagining itself into existence. But then it comes again, a tiny rise of the puppy's chest followed by a thin, trembling breath that breaks the silence like the first crack of light before dawn. Evan lifts his head, his eyes fixed on the small bundle against him. The pup's ribs expand once more, slow but certain, drawing in air as if remembering how to fight its way back. Dr. Hannah Brooks steps closer, her breath catching softly when she sees the movement. She leans in, listening with practiced focus as the puppy exhales a faint sound, something halfway between a sigh and a soft plea for more strength. "There it is," she whispers. "He is not done." Evan adjusts his hands around the pup, careful not to disturb the fragile rhythm trying to rebuild itself. Warmth gathers beneath the blanket, subtle but real, spreading through the tiny body like a hesitant glow. The puppy's paws twitch, its small toes curling as if reaching toward something familiar. Evan lowers his voice to a gentle murmur. "I am right here. Keep going." The monitor beside them flickers with a small but unmistakable rise in the heartbeat reading. Dr. Brooks's expression softens into something close to awe, the kind of look she saves for the rare moments when nature chooses to defy the odds it wrote for itself. She adjusts the oxygen line, her hands steady but her eyes wide with quiet relief. "This is a good sign," she says softly. "He is responding. He is trying very hard." Evan brings the puppy closer to his chest, letting the pup feel the steady beat beneath his uniform. The little one shifts, pressing its tiny head against him as though anchoring itself to that rhythm. A faint warmth spreads through Evan's chest, a feeling he has not allowed himself to feel in a long time, a gentle, rising hope. "You are doing so well," he whispers. The room stays wrapped in a delicate hush as the seconds pass. The puppy's breathing steadies little by little, gaining a fragile consistency that was missing before. It still trembles with effort, but each breath seems more committed, more certain, as if the small life inside has chosen its direction. Outside the clinic window, the first faint hint of sunrise begins to push against the night, painting the sky with a soft gray that promises a new day. Dr. Brooks glances toward the shifting light, then back at the table. "He has made it through the hardest part," she says gently. "He is not out of danger yet, but this," she gestures toward the pup's rising chest. "This is the moment we hoped for." Evan lets out a slow breath, one that feels heavier on the way out than it did going in. Relief moves through him in warm waves, loosening the tension he has carried since he lifted the puppy from the flooded ditch. The little one nudges into him again, its breath faint but steady, its small body warming in his hands. The world outside continues lightening, and for the first time in a long while, Evan feels the beginning of morning not as another burden to carry, but as a quiet gift. And in his arms, a tiny heartbeat continues to grow stronger, choosing life with every trembling breath it takes. Morning light begins to seep gently through the frosted windows of the small clinic, washing the room in a pale gold that softens every edge. The night's tension lingers in the air, but it now shares space with something warmer, something that feels like a promise slowly unfolding. Evan sits where he has been for hours, the tiny German Shepherd pup still nestled in the crook of his arms. The warmth beneath the blanket has grown steady, no longer flickering like a candle in danger of going out. The pup sleeps, its tiny breaths forming a delicate rhythm against his chest. Each rise and fall feels like a small miracle repeating itself. Dr. Hannah Brooks enters with a fresh chart in her hands, her steps light, careful not to disturb the creature who has fought so hard through the night. She pauses when she sees the pup's peaceful breathing and the quiet exhaustion softening Evan's face. "Looks like he has finally found some rest," she says softly. Evan nods, his voice still hushed with awe. "He earned it." Dr. Brooks approaches the table and checks the monitor. The readings show a steady climb upward, the kind that tells her the fight has turned a corner. "His temperature is almost normal," she notes. "He is not out of the woods, but he is very much alive." Evan lets out a slow breath, the kind that empties more than just his lungs. The pup shifts slightly, its tiny nose pressing into the fabric of his uniform. Evan instinctively adjusts his hold, his hand cupping the back of the pup's head with a gentleness that surprises even him. "He trusts you," Dr. Brooks observes. "Sometimes that bond forms before either side realizes it." Evan glances down at the little face resting against him. The fur is still damp in places, but the color has returned to its natural warmth. He traces one small ear with his thumb, and the pup gives a faint twitch as if acknowledging the touch even in sleep. The sun climbs a little higher, sending a soft beam across the examination table. Dust motes drift lazily through the light, turning the air golden. The clinic feels different now, not merely a place of medicine but a place where something tender is being woven quietly between two lives. Dr. Brooks adjusts the blinds slightly, letting in more morning light. "Once he wakes up, we will try a little food," she says. "Only a few drops at a time. But based on what I am seeing, he will be strong enough to try." Evan nods, though his attention never leaves the pup. "I will be here," he says. "As long as he needs." The doctor smiles, recognizing the sincerity in his voice. "Then he has the best chance possible." As she leaves the room, the door closes with a soft click, leaving Evan alone with the newborn quiet of a new day. He watches the pup breathe, its tiny chest rising with more confidence now. The warmth spreading through his hands feels different than before. Not just relief. Not just gratitude. Something deeper. A sense of connection that anchors him to this moment in a way he has not felt anchored in a long time. The pup stirs once more, a soft hum escaping its throat as if greeting the morning before its eyes even open. Evan smiles, a small, quiet smile that settles into the corners of his face like sunlight finding a home. "You made it," he whispers. "We both did." In the hush of the clinic, with the warm blanket cradling a life that refused to slip away, something unspoken but unmistakable settles between them. A beginning. The morning deepens into a soft and quiet warmth, spreading through the small clinic like a gentle invitation for life to begin again. The tiny German Shepherd puppy shifts in Evan's arms, no longer trembling with the fragile uncertainty of the night before, but resting with a steadiness that feels new and quietly victorious. Sunlight gathers along the edges of the examination table, touching the blanket wrapped around the pup and turning its damp fur into threads of gold. Evan watches the rise and fall of the small chest, letting each breath settle something inside him that had been restless for far too long. There is a stillness in him now, a kind of peace he has not felt since before deployment, before the long nights and longer memories that never seemed to leave him alone. Dr. Hannah Brooks steps back into the room with a small bottle of diluted formula and a tiny dropper. Her smile carries the kind of relief that only comes after hours spent balancing between hope and fear. "If he is ready," she says, "we will try a little nourishment." Evan lifts the pup slightly, supporting its fragile neck. "Do you think he has the strength?" he asks. Dr. Brooks nods. "He made it through the longest night. That tells me he has more strength than we think." She hands Evan the dropper and positions herself nearby, watching with the patient focus of someone who has guided many small lives through moments like this. Evan places the tiniest drop near the pup's mouth. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the little one stirs, nudges weakly toward the dropper, and opens its mouth just enough to take in a few precious drops. It is slow, hesitant, but real. Dr. Brooks's smile widens. That is a wonderful sign. Evan feels his chest swell with something warm and quiet. He watches the pup take another drop, then another, each one a small promise that the world is pulling him forward instead of letting him fade. "He is a fighter," Evan murmurs. "He always was," the doctor replies. "He just needed someone to remind him he was not fighting alone." The words linger in the air, settling deeper than he expects. He looks down at the little one nestled in his hands, at the weak but determined movements, and feels an echo inside himself. The kind of echo that reminds him of nights when all he needed was someone to stay, someone to anchor him through the exhaustion he never spoke about. He lifts the puppy closer, allowing its tiny head to rest against his chest. The soft weight grounds him, drawing a quiet gratitude to the surface. "What happens now?" he asks softly. Dr. Brooks takes the empty dropper, cleaning it with slow, thoughtful movements. "Now we keep helping him grow stronger," she says. "And when he is ready to stand on his own, he will show us." Evan nods, absorbing the truth of her words. Outside, the day brightens, sunlight stretching across the parking lot and touching the tops of the pine trees with gentle gold. The storm has left the world washed and clean, the air carrying a faint scent of earth and new beginnings. Evan looks back at the tiny pup, who now sleeps with a peacefulness that was impossible just hours ago. Something shifts quietly inside him, a sense that the night did not just save a small life, but returned something to him as well. Calm settles over the room as the pup breathes in steady, hopeful rhythms, leaning into the warmth of the person who refused to leave him. And in that simple, quiet moment, a new bond takes root, born from two souls who survived the same long night. The day outside the clinic brightens into a gentle glow, the kind of morning that feels washed clean, as if the world itself has taken a slower breath. Inside, the small examination room holds a different kind of quiet now, a warm and settled stillness shaped by the steady rhythm of the tiny German Shepherd puppy sleeping against Evan's chest. His fur has mostly dried, softening into its natural texture, and his breaths fall into a peaceful cadence that no longer trembles with uncertainty. Evan rises from the stool, stretching his stiff shoulders, but he cradles the pup with the same care as before, as though the little one is a fragile promise he is afraid to disturb. Dr. Hannah Brooks steps in with a clipboard tucked under her arm, watching the pair with a light that softens her entire expression. "He is stronger," she says. "You can take him home today, but he will need warmth, small meals, and someone who will not let him out of their sight." Evan nods, the words carrying a quiet certainty. "I can do that." She smiles. "I never doubted it." Evan gathers the new supplies she has prepared, a small bottle, a blanket, and a tiny collar he will not use yet. Everything feels small compared to his hands, but important in a way he cannot quite explain. He carries the puppy to his truck, the morning air cool but gentle against his skin. The sun peeks through the pine trees, casting long, soft beams across the parking lot. As soon as Evan settles into the driver's seat, the little pup stirs, lifting his head for the first time with its own strength. His eyes open, hazy but curious, reflecting a faint shimmer of gold from the sunlight. Evan smiles, the expression slow and quiet, as if it has been waiting inside him for a long time. "Hey there," he whispers. "Welcome back." The puppy lets out a tiny sound, something like a soft greeting, before resting again against his chest. It is in that moment, gentle and still, that Evan realizes something has shifted. The night had taken them both through a place of shadows, but the morning has returned them to something steadier, something that feels like grace. He drives home along the county road, the one where he first saw the trembling shape fighting to stay above the rushing water. The ditch now lies calm beneath the early light, the storm's fury replaced by a quiet stream that moves like a memory softened by time. Evan slows the truck without meaning to. His gaze drifts to the small patch of grass where he first saw the pup holding on with the last of its strength. For a moment, he simply breathes. Not out of fear. Not out of worry. But out of gratitude, for the miracle he did not expect, and for the small life that reached back toward him when he reached down. At home, he lays the puppy on a soft blanket near the couch. The little one lifts his head again, wobbly but determined, and looks up at him with an innocence that feels almost like a blessing. Evan kneels beside him, letting the small body lean into his hand. "You made it through the storm," he whispers. "And I guess I did too." The pup nudges his palm with surprising confidence, as if agreeing. Sunlight spills across the room, warming the space where man and pup sit close, their shadows touching on the floor. In that quiet, golden moment, no grand celebration is needed. No applause. No loud victory. Just a soft understanding that sometimes the smallest acts of mercy save more than one soul. And sometimes, in the quiet. After a long night, two lives begin again, side by side.